Welcome back, everybody. We are officially 2.5 hours away from the start of Week 8 Thursday Night Football. That should be a lot of fun between the Vikings and the Rams. I think Vikings are a 3-point favorite. So I think people forgot they were undefeated before last week. That
Yeah.
was a great game to see them against the Lions. Corstian, welcome back. I heard you have a couple of fun stuff you noticed, like just in this last week or the past couple of weeks or up this season at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I feel like each week I see some like weird or like interesting stats, or surprising stats that I think are cool, and I just kind of fun to share at the beginning. But I feel like the first one is with the Jets. I feel like has been a hot topic with us like the whole season pretty much. But so last season, with Zach Wilson, the Jets started in their first 7 games. They started 4-3. This year,
Oh, I think I've seen this. Yeah.
Yeah, with Aaron Rodgers, they're 2-5, which, like, it's kind of scary to think about because I think it was like ESPN or somebody's like power rankings, and they do it by like team strength rather than like your records. Like they're still having like the Jets as like a top 15 team in the league. And so it's like everybody still sees the potential, but like it's just crazy how disappointing they've been this season. And like 4-3 with Zach Wilson is just a crazy thing to think about. And you're like, you were better last year with Zach Wilson than this year with Aaron Rodgers, which
Yeah. I mean, like that in a vacuum is crazy, but I think the defense looks completely different. Than
well, yeah, obviously
I think that's a large. Yeah. I think that's a large, obvious reason why it's been so bad. But
yeah.
Yeah,
But then
I mean,
you know
even after
you bring in Aaron
Devontae
Rodgers.
trade, like I get it was the first week. You expected so much more. He was the main reason why I lost a big bet. Like he needed one more catch, and I literally would have won my bet, and I was so mad he didn't. So I was like, it's crazy. But anyway, we're not gonna dwell on that. Yeah. Well, do you got any other cool stuff you noticed?
Yeah, 2 more things. I'm sure you've seen this one too, but it's that Mike Evans is the 5th fastest wide receiver to get 100 receiving touchdowns, which is pretty crazy. The others being Terrell Owens, Jerry Rice, Randy Moss, and Marvin Harrison.
Marvin Harrison Sr. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's like I remember like a year ago, maybe a little over a year ago, like I was talking, maybe it was last season, I was talking to how like Mike Evans may be one of the best of all times. Because like, and the discussion is like, he's never been the best single hand receiver, like in any given season he's been in, but like the consistency he's had and like the production, I mean, that we're seeing here with him being the 5th fastest to 100 TDs amongst this list. And it's like, when do we start talking about like, I'm not going to call him the GOAT because I think I'd still have these other guys over him, but like,
yeah.
I think people are now more than ever realizing like how good he has been. And like, I feel like I hope Mike Evans remains a guy in my head that like, 20 plus years down the road, and I'm talking about like the superstars, I'll remember Mike Evans as like one of these legends.
Yeah, no, 100%. Like you could always chalk him up for 1,000-yard season and 10 touchdowns for every season, and that's how you get to 100 touchdowns. Like it's ridiculous how consistent he's been, and I don't think people really appreciated how good he was until like Tom Brady joined as the Buccaneers quarterback. And because like even from Texas A&M, he was overlooked because it was all the hype was on Manziel, and everybody was like, "Oh yeah, Mike Evans, that wide receiver, like the one that Manziel threw it to." Like he's a pretty good receiver in his own right, and yeah, we'll talk about him more later. But like just the bill of health, like he's had up to this point, it's just incredible as well. He's one of the most underrated receivers in our generation.
Yeah, and then my third stat, which really surprised me, was it's about Troy Franklin. Against the Saints, he had 100% separation rate, which means that Troy was open and beat coverage on every single route that he ran against the Saints, which
Wow.
which was the best in the NFL last week.
Yeah, I mean, and it's kind of odd too because they struggled against the Saints. Like it was a crazy game. Like it was not. Oh wait, no, sorry, I have it flipped. Never mind.
I was like, what do you mean, bro? They cooked him.
I didn't watch the game at all. That probably explains why. Yeah, I was at my flag football championship game, which was pretty much the last game since we don't have playoffs and championships, so they just dubbed it as the championship game and yeah, happy hour and whatnot. So by the time I hit the game, it was the fourth quarter, and I knew it was a blowout, so I was like fell asleep watching it. But yeah, there you go. I was just making sure you're paying attention, like ready to defend your Broncos.
Yeah, it was like maybe in like the first half ish, but like not even really.
No, but, like once by the time I came back, I think it was like a 30-point blowout. Like it was
something like that. Yeah. Final score 33-10.
Wow, that's closer than I thought it was. Yeah. So, I mean, that's good prospects for Troy Franklin playing the Bo Nix. I'm telling you, these guys are gonna get it rolling. Like 100% separation rate. That's insane. I get it that like many defenses play zone. It's a lot easier to just pick a space and get open. But like against man, that's really hard. Like the Saints have good cover corners too. So the fact that
granted the Saints corners were out. I think Lattimore was out at the start, and then Paulson Adebo, he got hurt like mid game. So I mean, there's like there's some asterisks to it, but like the fact that a rookie wide receiver taken as late as he was with the early season struggles, he's worked his way up to this kind of point. I mean, I'm not expecting 100% of this the rest of his career, obviously, but like it's just like a cool surprise stat I think that I noticed. That I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. Maybe he's like I mean, everybody kind of has him as a under the radar guy, but even more so, I think after this week, just seeing that like he's able to do this against at least a pro defense.
Oh, for sure. Okay, alrighty. Moving on from the fact that I didn't watch the game between the Broncos and the Saints. Let's move on to a major trade. The Chiefs do it again, like a couple weeks after losing Rasheed Rice, and still being at 6-0. They make the move to get DeAndre Hopkins, and we talked about a couple wide receiver trades last time. This just adds to it. I think it's a conditional move. They give the Titans the 5th round pick that can become a 4th round pick. I assume that has to deal with like where Hopkins like stands as far as playing time or rewards, something like that. So, what do you make of this deal? Like, obviously, there's probably clear winners here, but analyzing the situation, what do you see?
Yeah, I think people are clowning on the Titans a little bit too much, and because like the Titans are very much in like a rebuild mode where it's like there's really no point in keeping some of your older assets. And so it's like, sure, DeAndre Hopkins likes being a Titan, but like you have maybe high quality play out of him for maybe another 2 seasons. That's not enough time for like a rebuild to like fully set in, especially just how many holes you got on both sides of the team. And so I think, just getting some type of value out of him at like, he's like 32 years old now too, I think is good. And then obviously the Chiefs get like, this is probably with the injuries and not like, this is probably their best receiver right now. And it's like I think the Chiefs were kind of felt desperate to make a move, just because like Patrick Mahomes is having a pretty bad year this season. Even at the start when he did have Rasheed Rice for like the first games or whatever, he was still throwing a decent amount of interceptions. Right now, his TD interception ratio is 6-8, and so I think just having a solid possession receiver. That's maybe exiting his prime in DeAndre Hopkins. I still think is a positive for this team, and adds some stability to the receiver room outside of like Juju Smith-Schuster and then Xavier Worthy. He's very much a boomer bust per week kind of player, so it's not like you're relying on him to be like the dominating force within your offense, and so you get just more stability this way.
Yeah, but I'll start with the Chiefs perspective. I really like this move. This gives you a guy that you cannot ignore on the defensive end. Like you always have to dedicate like multiple guys on Hopkins, and you combine that with like the space that they open up for Kelsey, and then one of your guys you called out at the very, very beginning of this podcast when we made it, Noah Gray, your guy. Like you open up, he had a phenomenal game last week, and if you open up more space for those guys, like that's gonna help Patrick Mahomes a lot with making clearer reads and even 50-50 balls. Like you have a trust guy now. That used to be Rasheed Rice. So good move on the Chiefs. This makes it that much harder to defend them. And they don't have to worry about turning the ball as much. So I like this move a lot. And the Titans, I'm agreement with you. I think they're in let's get Cam Ward on our team as soon as possible mode. That guy is balling. You look at the numbers he's piling up for Miami. Dude, I think I get it. Ashton and Travis, they're competing for the Heisman Trophy right now in college football. But like any other year, Cam Ward is probably the clear front runner there. He is. I think he's a top 5 pick this year. Just watching him play, he looks that phenomenal. And but where the Titans are headed is they're probably looking for a new quarterback because you cannot keep trotting out Will Levis or Mason Rudolph. They tried it both these weeks. Like it's not happening for them. So like whether it's Ward or Shadir, like you're just trying to collect as much assets as possible to build around that. So this is probably going to be like a pass catcher, offensive lineman of note on day 2. That's really significant for their new QB. And Hopkins is not like that timeline just does not fit at all. So I think they noticed that, and I think they made the move to address it. Personally, I would have traded him to a different conference. I probably wouldn't have given him to the Chiefs. But for the Titans focus, they're trying to focus on winning their division. So if they can't do that, then they probably don't want the Texans or the Colts like making it way too far. So like he had to make a move like this. As long as it's not a division, that's fine. But I think this is a big win for the Chiefs and a semi-win for the Titans. I don't look at this as the Titans lost the deal because Hopkins wasn't really helping them with the way Will Levis has been playing.
Yeah. And then like with the whole people complaining about trading to the Chiefs, sure, like for the rest of the NFL, it is infuriating that the Chiefs get a weapon like DeAndre Hopkins. But if you look at it from like the Titans' perspective as well, you think that like the Titans in rebuild mode are probably still not relevant the next 2 to 3 years. And it's like, I mean, if they are relevant, if let's say they dropped a quarterback, they had like a CJ Stroud, Jaden Daniels kind of resurgence. That's amazing for them. But most likely it won't be quite that big of a turnaround right away. And so by the time they are relevant, there's a good chance DeAndre Hopkins will not be the same playmaker for the Chiefs when they're competing. And so it's like, sure, I mean, like it's a lost season for the next 2 to 4 years, maybe in the full rebuild. Give an aging receiver to one of the top teams. Top teams will use him up. By year 5, is a 37-year-old or 36-year-old DeAndre Hopkins going to be a problem for us in our road through to the playoffs and beyond, And so I think that's another factor, like when you're a team in the state of the Titans or like other like just teams that probably won't be good for the foreseeable future. Like trading to top teams I don't think is really too big of an issue, but it is infuriating for the rest of the league.
Yeah, and people acted like Buffalo on draft day traded away the best player in the draft to the Chiefs. They didn't do that. They got the better receiver in Coleman. You look at the way Coleman is like balling right now in one-on-one kids. He looks better than Worthy, even though Worthy looked phenomenal to start the season. Like it's not like teams are handing Chiefs like the weapons they need. It's more like the Chiefs are playing such complimentary ball right now, and they have the talent that can just turn it on at any time. And that's what's the most infuriating if you're a team like playing them, because you look at all these one-score games they're involved in, you're like, we're right there with them. We just cannot close the deal for whatever reason. So just a quick note on that. Did you see that the Rams were trying to deal Cooper Kupp, and then the Chiefs were interested, but it would have been like a second round pick to pay up. So, and she doesn't want to take up their salary. Did you see that?
Yeah, I saw some of that. I wonder, like the Rams are in an interesting spot just with because they've stunk this season predominantly because their two best weapons on offense have been just out the entire time.
Yeah.
Because without, these injuries happening, we both predicted them to be competitive, fighting in the playoff race, potentially having a decent playoff run if they make the playoffs. But then you think it's what week in the NFL are we on? 7, 8?
Week 8, yeah.
And the Rams have had both those guys for 2 weeks max. And so you're thinking it's because I think they're hoping to get both of them to suit up today. And so I think I do think it's a trap game for the Vikings potentially. If Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua are both back, healthy.
Yeah, it's looking like couple play. I don't know too much about Puka. I saw he was on IR, but
yeah, they took him off IR.
Okay.
And so he's questionable to suit up. And they said it's going to be a game time decision if he plays tonight or not.
That should be a phenomenal game. One quick note on Hopkins. He looks really, really good in this deal, and not besides the fact that he's upgraded. He's got a quarterback upgrade, clearly.
Oh, yeah.
He's going to be a free agent after this year. Think about it. He's in the most ideal situation to go on the free agent market, at whatever age he's in. And from that perspective, this is just a half a year rental for the Chiefs. And then somebody's going to pay up for his services. Some young organization that's looking for a rookie QB, and it's going to be a Keenan Allen situation for Caleb Williams. So imagine him in Washington after half a year with the Chiefs on a really, really good deal with the quarterback. That's the kind of situation Hopkins is going to be in as a result of this move, because I don't think he's diminished at all. Mahomes will get better. I know the start of the season is not how he's going to play in the playoffs. You have Travis Kelce there. He's going to get prime spots to capitalize. So he's a clear winner in this trade as well.
Yeah, overall, I mean, in a way, it's surprising just because it's always surprising to see a trade like this go down. But when you think about it, for all three parties involved, it does seem like each team does benefit.
And that's why you do trades. That's exactly why you do them.
Yeah, but I mean, typically, there people will say there's winners and losers in the trade, but in this case, I feel like there really isn't a loser. Again, everybody manages to reach their goals to the extent that we can in a trade. I think there's that means I feel like when if you look back at Hopkins' trade to the Cardinals from the Texans, most Texans fans were pretty upset with the compensation they got, because at the time this is prime DeAndre Hopkins, and you get a second round pick, which is all right, but then you also get David Johnson post prime, and so it's in a case like that, you're thinking the Texans probably lost that trade. Whereas here, I feel like everybody benefits from this. And I don't really see anybody losing, at least to that great to a great value or whatever.
Yeah. You could say, oh, they could have got higher compensation, but it's hard to make that argument with the way Hopkins is playing. Not his own fault. It's because of Will Levis. So as a result, the Titans suffered in the draft compensation they could have got versus what they actually got. But yeah, I agree. I think there's mostly winners here across the board. The Titans really just had a dead asset sitting that wasn't going to benefit from their current state on the team. So they at least got something out of it instead of just losing them the free agency outright. Moving on to the Bucs. Really, really sad news, especially on the Chris Godwin front. Mike Evans came into the game with a sore hamstring. Sat out a couple games trying to rest that hamstring. Went up for a touchdown catch. It was about to be a second touchdown catch of the game. Got tackled, landed weird, on the front of his body, but enough pressure to something happened with his hamstring. Throughout the game, he didn't return. And then with less than a minute remaining, Chris Godwin gets rolled up on by Roquan Smith. And next thing you know, his leg is up in the air. He's in an air cast and like he's out for the year. For my fantasy team, this absolutely sucks. But for the players and the team, this sucks even more. Like this, these were like two linchpins of their team, and they're gonna like Mike Evans is gonna be gone for a significant amount of time. Galvin's not gonna be there anymore. How do you assess the situation? Like, how do you think Baker's gonna regress, or like who do you think steps up?
Well, like, I guess it was. I think this like makes the draft more valuable. I guess, like with Jalen McMillan, like they drafted him in the 3rd round, and now it's kind of it almost feels like it's like a make or break kind of with him. With I mean, he's still a rookie, so you can't expect all too much. But then you still got guys behind who obviously they're not going to be Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. That's probably one of the best duos I'll ever see in football in my lifetime. But like Trey Palmer, he was decently serviceable last year when and he showed up in the playoffs. So it's like he has ball experience. We've seen that while he may not be the best, he's still like a solid receiver to have on the team. You got Jalen McMillan who in college he balled out and they drafted him high for a reason. But then you also look at like the Buccaneers with Rachaad White. Bucky Irving and Sean Tucker, they've shown that they're like pretty efficient runners. Probably a little bit more efficient than White, but White is also just an elite receiving back. And so
he had a great game receiving last game as well.
Yeah, I think he had like 2 receiving touchdowns or something like that. And so, it's like they still have playmakers is kind of like the case that I'm making for him right now. I don't know. They won't finish as strong as I probably like thought they would have to, if both their guys are healthy, obviously. But then I heard reports that apparently Mike Evans was dealing with hamstring like issues before the game.
And yeah.
And then I think I saw like on a Bucs subreddit thing, they saw like after one of his after that first touchdown, he was kind of limping a little bit, and fans are saying he should have been pulled at that point if he's limping, with his hamstring injury.
And it wasn't just that. Like I was watching the game and noticing that I was like, oh yeah, he's lingering a bit. Like needs to get stretched out and everything like that. But I mean, you trust the play. That was like a key game for them. Like that's like you want to see how they do against the stiffest of competition. So it's like tough for them to like pull out and like pull them out of the game.
But then at the end with Chris Godwin too, like the game's like there's like 40 seconds left in the game or something. You're down 10 points. Sure, if you score a touchdown like at the end of the field, cool. But that means you're relying on an onside kick and then getting into field goal position in like 10 seconds.
No timeouts at that time.
Like so you're hoping for all this, and so it's like it's a tough call just because like your guys have been competing so long, and so it's hard to like want to pull out your guys. But I think I read that literally one of the commentators right before the Godwin injury is like, how long do you keep these guys in before like these guys, for safety, and then literally the next play Godwin gets hurt, and I'm like, come on, man, like.
Yeah, that's a tough. It makes like you're angry at that point for them getting injured. Like you have to place the blame on somebody, like head coach or like whoever decides to. Like, at the end of the game, it's just rough. Like because these guys are such competitive players in nature. Like they're not going to be wanting. They don't want to be taken out of the game. Like it's like you think Ayuk wanted to be like out and sideline for as long as he did, despite tearing 2 ligaments. Like these guys don't want to get out of the game. It's a fun children's game that they get to play for professional reasons, and at that level, it's so serious. Like you should have seen Jameis after like Deshaun Watson got hurt, like with his Achilles injury. Like the way he talked about Deshaun was serious. Like they have to play with that mode, like in order to get the results that they want. But you didn't even mention Cade Otton. Cade Otton had 100 yards in that game. Like
Cade Otton's a beast.
I think he's gonna be their primary receiving option going forward with the state of their roster. But like you mentioned Trey Palmer, and the rapport that Baker has with him.
Mm-hmm.
Then you mentioned McMillan, the very promising receiver out of college, and then
Mm-hmm.
Sterling Shepard. He played with Baker Mayfield in Oklahoma, and he had a really, really good like they had a good tandem going in Oklahoma. So
Mm-hmm.
like Baker's familiar with those three receivers that are going to be out there,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not too worried on that front. I think he mentioned it allows them to be more creative as an offense, and I agree. Like since you don't know who the ball is going to go to exactly, like
Mm-hmm.
you can run whatever plays you want. And
Mm-hmm.
Baker's progress, like in stepping up in the pocket this year, has been a noticeable difference in
Mm-hmm.
his game. And the fact that he's doing that isn't going to change with new receivers out there. It's going to
Mm-hmm.
give like he's buying them more time to get open. And I think some of his reads were bad against the Ravens game, like that throw to Marlon Humphrey in the end zone. That was a bad read.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was really bad. But for the most part, he's played like a completely different person.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think it's going to have like a significant impact on them.
Mm-hmm.
I think there might be 20%, 80% as productive as they would be if they had Galvin and
Mm-hmm.
Evans.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I wouldn't be surprised if the Buccaneers are a candidate to like trade for a receiver. I know I've seen like fans like unofficially say like it would be a good idea or it would be an interesting idea to have Cooper Kupp get traded to the Buccaneers. I'm kind of just filling this role here, especially if like, Cooper Kupp's coming back healthy. And so it's like if the Rams lose tonight with the receivers, and then the Buccaneers struggle with the lack of receivers, it wouldn't be a surprising like move for them to like send something over to try to get Cooper Kupp to like fill in. Plus, because then you have Godwin out for the season, you'll have Cooper Kupp as like a solid one until Mike Evans gets back, and then you got the tandem of Mike Evans and then Cooper Kupp for the remainder of the season. But we'll see what.
Yeah, the Godwin injury probably sucks the most because that
Mm-hmm.
was like he was balling in that offense and the way they schemed
Mm-hmm.
him open. Like he was playing the Cooper Kupp role. And like that's a perfect role because Liam Cohen has come from that Rams tree. So I wouldn't be surprised if they do try to make a move for
Mm-hmm.
Cooper Kupp. We referenced Deshaun Watson getting injured. Just a quick note on the crowd like booing him for what they did. Like I just want to be clear. I'm not defending Deshaun Watson or whatnot. But I am just stating the facts that like none of these like all these cases were civil.
Mm.
Like he wasn't like criminally charged. They were all like they were all settlements and there was no actual proof that he did what he did. Now, I may have doubts about that. Of course, I may have doubts about that. You might have doubts about that.
Mm-hmm.
But you weren't doing that at the start of the game. You weren't booing him at the start of the game. He was actually having probably one of his best games that he's had this season, which is
Mm-hmm.
not saying a lot with the way that Browns offense has been and the fact that he hasn't thrown for more than 200 yards in any single game this year.
Mm-hmm.
But as fans, you weren't doing that at the start of the game. You weren't doing it throughout any of the games. Like you were just doing it when things got bad. And to do it when he tore his Achilles, that is just a jerk move, man. That is just a jerk move. Like you're kicking a man while he's down. And if it comes out that he's falsely accused for all of these cases and it was just money grabs by people who sensed opportunity,
Mm-hmm.
that it's gonna make you look a lot worse when you do that. So I mean to me, I just think booing somebody when they get injured is a bad look on yourself. Um, but regardless of what they've done, like if it was true, yeah, I absolutely despise the guy, like
Mm-hmm.
as a person, 100%. But that's not going to change like what he's done on the football field for like all the great moments he's had. And I'm going to boo him if he has a bad performance. But you booed him and cheered when he tore his Achilles. Like, come on now. That is just rough. So like So I say that to say, like, for coming at the players who were standing up for him, they're probably the closest like he's been to in the locker room. They probably know him better than you probably do since that situation come up. So why are you going at the teammates supporting him? Like, I don't get it. Like, if there was definitive proof on any of these things, I would say otherwise. But because things have been so up in the air, there's not been clear information on this. I can't just go cheering that he tore his Achilles. Like, if that changed. But even if that was the case, I probably wouldn't cheer that he tore his Achilles. I'd probably hate the man because he did what he did, and just leave it at that. And that's just something I had to say about it. But I don't know if you wanted to add on or say your piece. But
yeah, I mean, I feel like most Browns have hated him since he's been a Brown, like low key. But
yeah, I mean the contract situation we discussed a ton, like, and that's been rough. I think I haven't dug into the details on what happens as a result of his Achilles injury, but I'd imagine Cleveland gets a lot of reprieve now because of this. But they're even so, it was like such a poorly placed contract in retrospect
yeah,
that it's like they're still in a rough position where I think in either scenario that you got to start looking at Cam Ward, Shadur Sanders, like Carson Beck, these guys, and figuring out, okay, how do we let's invest in one of them and let's develop them while we have this crappy situation.
yeah.
But for now, Jameis is stepping in as starting quarterback. How do you think this is going to affect their offense? Who do you think is going to be major players here?
Honestly, I feel like this elevates almost everybody in the offense. Like my prediction really is like we see Jameis Winston have like a 250 pass yard, like 2 touchdown, 2 interception game, classic Jameis. But like it's almost like the Joe Flacco stats from last year, where like Joe Flacco he'd throw 300 yards and like 4 touchdowns, but that'll also be with 3 interceptions. But their defense was like good enough to like keep them in the game, and and then the rest of his gunslinging just like allowed the offense to at least put points up on the board, which would force other teams to like have to score to not just like game manage. And so I envision something similar, at least with the offense happening. But that's kind of my take with how Jameis is with this offense.
Yeah, I agree. I've seen David Njoku like stocks go up as a result of that. I see that. I'm gonna go with Cedric Tillman. Cedric Tillman has been a guy from like the draft class like 2 years ago, if you guys remember. I was really high on as a prospect, and because of like Amari Cooper and the amount of receivers that Cleveland initially had on that depth chart, there wasn't a path forward where he could show what he could do. I think he's the perfect player to marry what Jameis does. If you think about what Jameis does in like Tampa Bay, like, and all the stops he's been at since then, like he will launch that ball no matter if you're double covered, triple covered, single covered, like he doesn't care. The one thing he's had is a rocket of an arm, and that matches with what Tillman does in this game. So I think you're going to start to see some really great weeks from Tillman. I'm really excited about that. And then I think this helps Nick Chubb. Like, I was really worried about Nick Chubb going into this game. I did not know what to expect. And the fact that he still has change of direction skills after 2 major injuries to the same knee, like he could make a legitimate play of like case for comeback player of the year if Sam Darnold doesn't do that. Like like I'm waiting to see the top end speed. Like if he's able to at least hit 80% of like what he previously was like before he hurt this recently. But I think he's going to benefit because of the spacing that Jameis is going to provide in the passing game. Like Jameis is an explosive passer. The thing with him is he makes bad decisions. That's like ill-advised decisions. Like he can read coverages, but like he still thinks he can get away with it with his arm. That's the problem with Jameis.
Yeah. So, and I think with the like I envision them probably still losing this week. They are going against the Ravens. And so I think like our first real opportunity to see kind of like how this new Browns offense functions is next week in week 9 when they go against the Chargers. I feel like that'll be a lot like a safer matchup for them, where Nick Chubb's that much further into his like playing and whatnot, and he's not going to be going against the Ravens front.
He's just getting his feet wet, so yeah.
And so I feel like, if anything, the Chargers game will probably be the first week we see good or at least above average stats for a lot of these guys in this Browns offense. Also, I looked up if the injury affects the pay or whatever, and apparently the injury on A to Z Sports, it says the injury doesn't affect how much money the Browns have to pay Deshaun Watson. He's still expected to make $46 million in each of the 2 seasons. So injury does not really affect his salary.
I stand corrected. They're still screwed either way.
Yeah, because I think it was like a fully guaranteed contract.
Right.
And so because of the nature of that, like if it's salary based, then like you can knock off with injury, but like it is, I think, just a fully guaranteed contract.
Yeah. So, I mean, here, like as far as their season goes, like they got semblance of light, but it's going to be a tough uphill sledding against the Ravens. I will say this: division games are typically competitive, and I know the Ravens are going absolutely ballistic right now, but the Browns have a chance here. Like the last time they faced like the Ravens in Baltimore, that game was probably one of the best in the year. Like there was so much going on in that like game, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, that I think we could see a high scoring game where it's not going to be like the Ravens up by 20 or 30. So for the quarterback they have going into it with Jameis, that bodes well for them. So we could see something of that nature. I wouldn't rule it out.
Yeah.
Okay. Your old QB, let's ride.
Danger
Russell Wilson. Yeah, I gotta see what his trademark is for his like his Steelers debut. I think it's like get the 7 or something like that.
Maybe I didn't see.
I've just heard that, but I don't know how much truth to it that there is. But after watching him against the Jets, do you trust him as the starting QB for the Steelers, or do you think it should be Justin Fields?
I mean, I think both quarterbacks played really well. Both in like their stints. Obviously, like with the way he played, I think at least from like the passing perspective, it was better than Justin Fields. I mean, Justin Fields' mobile upside is obviously higher, and I think like led to the offense being slightly more dynamic, but you also can't turn away and like knock Russell Wilson at all, because like they also balled out with his way of running the offense, and it's like, and I feel like with Russell Wilson, it really is just trust him until you don't, because I mean, I was looking at their upcoming games. You go against the Giants this week. Like, I expect him to have a good game there, and then they go against the Commanders, and the Commanders' defense is kind of meh, and so like, I can envision him having a good game there. Week 10 again. What was the Commanders game? Okay, no. Week 11 they go against the Ravens, and I don't know. I feel like maybe the Ravens is like the quote unquote test game. He's like, I mean, like the Jets, I think were also partially a test game because they do have a good defense, but they also did get rid of their defensive guy with Robert Saleh, so it's like up in the air. But I mean, for now, trust him. I mean, he played good. There's no reason to not play him, is my thought on it.
Yeah, they have 5 games where it could be rough. Like 2 of them against the Ravens, 2 against the Bengals, and then 1 against the Eagles. Oh wait, and they're facing the Chiefs. So scratch that 6. So yeah, but most of them are towards the back half of the year. So I think by then, like you'll start to see like Russell Wilson like his feet under him. Like he started off the game really, really shaky, like one hopping balls to receivers, but then you saw the throws to Pickens. Like for me, when I saw the moon balls, I was like, he's back. He's back to Seattle, Russell Wilson. And that's a scary thought because like Arthur Smith is a really great offensive coordinator. Again, not a good head coach, but a really, really good offensive coordinator. And when I saw Najee have more efficient touches and look the way he did. Saw the line dominating more. And I saw Freiermuth get involved like on the very explosive plays. Then Pickens just snatching the ball out of the air from like multiple defenders. Like I was like, he's back. Like he's completely changed the way the focus is. And with Fields, like it's not that he can't do that. He can't do that now. He can't do like how Russell. So like it's a perfect learning opportunity for him. And, like how he can quarterback and anticipate. Like I get it. People have been off at him for his like off the field antics, but on the field, Russell Wilson, like if he plays like how he's played in Seattle, like on Pittsburgh, like this is a scary team, man. I really trust him. That like just watching how he developed over the course of the Jets game was enough for me to trust him as the starting quarterback for the Steelers.
Yeah, and like I think it felt like he was comfortable in the pocket as well, because like I mean, like I think he only took 1 sack. I don't know how many pressures he faced in this game, but like 'cause I remember like at like watching him with the Broncos. Like I think my biggest issue with him was like, sure, he had his good games and good moments as a passer for the Broncos as well, but like my biggest grievances with him would be if his first read wasn't open, in a perfectly clean pocket, he would immediately start to roll out, and then a lot of times because it is a clean pocket, he'd roll out into an offensive lineman, resulting in some type of like weird scramble evasion thing to avoid getting sacked in that moment. And that led to a couple.
He didn't manage the pocket well. Like he's not a great pocket manager right now.
Yeah. And so in this game, he looked comfortable. And so, I mean, I think that's what the tell is like when he gets faced. I mean, quarterbacks naturally do worse in pressure, but when he does face that pressure, he doesn't really step up into the pocket. So just kind of seeing how he handles that the rest of the season would be the thing to keep your eye on, at least with Russell Wilson. But, you know, he balled out. Props to him. Happy for him there.
Yeah. I thought you were talking about Fields there for a second when you were talking about like it's because I've noticed plays where like even the Bears where like Fields will like escape the pocket, but not like he'll escape into a worse situation. So it's like you don't want that. Like that's what Kyler Murray tends to do when he plays bad Kyler Murray football. And like yeah, you don't want that at all. But I just think like the type of players on the roster that help Fields the most with Pickens and then what Freiermuth can do, and then like Najee Harris benefiting from Russell Wilson is huge because like when they get into the red area, that's where you can showcase his game. That's where you can showcase his physicality, and whatnot. Like I think he's going to be the biggest benefactor of this, and yeah, I mean it's a completely different team. They look amazing, and honestly, they could probably beat anybody, like if this keeps up, because they spotted literally 31 straight points on the Jets. And had the Jets like all up in arms. I'm like, well, what is going on? Because we don't know what's. But credit to the Steelers here. That's they look great right now. Okay, another team that looks like they're also great and about to break records. I'm gonna read out a couple of wild stats just predicting the end of the year here. For let's see here. Sorry, I am not at the right. I'm not at the right site. Okay. But Lamar Jackson is pretty excited that Derrick Henry can break some records this year. I think Derrick Henry is projected to have 1,993 yards from the ground and 23 touchdowns. And Lamar might be the first like 5,000 yard like player from scrimmage, like from the quarterback position. Some stat like that. It is that is wild. That is wild stats to me. So, like from that perspective, do you believe it? Do you believe they can do it?
I think that they can.
Sorry, slight correction.
Oh,
instead of 5,000 yards, 5,300 yards from scrimmage. That's how much he's projected.
I think they can, and like it's because they've been doing it, you know, and because like I think people are wondering if we'd see a dip in Derrick Henry production because Lamar Jackson's such an efficient rusher, and like they'd be almost splitting opportunities for running the ball, but like it's crazy because like Derrick Henry and Lamar, I think, are both like top, like what's like Lamar's ranking in rushing stats? It's, I think last time I checked it was like top 8 or something, and you got Derrick Henry at 1, and it's like they're both doing this. Like neither one of them is like being negatively affected by the other's rushing ability. Plus, Lamar Jackson has been absolutely on fire as a passer, and so like I think that opens up the like just the running lanes so much more as well, because I think Lamar, even in this like first MVP season, I don't think it would be, the running attack would be as efficient, maybe just because of how their like pass attack was like molded around their how their pass attack went that season. But like now, with Lamar's just amazingly good passing ability, I think it makes it way more viable for Derrick Henry to get these rush yards, plus Lamar Jackson just to do his own thing still and keep on running like he does and get as many yards as he always does.
If you look at, I think he's ranked 11th right now.
Ranked 11th right now.
Yeah, he has 455 yards on the ground. Just for context, J.K. Dobbins has 478. Najee has 478. Alvin Kamara has less than Lamar Jackson. Ivan Williams, your guy, has 436. So like, what he's doing is otherworldly and an entirely different position than all these running backs. And when you look at Bateman, like he had a phenomenal game last time, and Flowers, who he didn't have a good game last week, but because everybody else is balling, he's had 2 100-yard seasons back to back. 100-yard games. And then you look at Andrews. Andrews had 2 touchdowns this past game. Everybody thought he was washed, and it was Likely's turn. He suddenly has 3 touchdowns in the past 2 games. Anybody on this offense can cook. And the fact that they have weapons loaded and like guys that have developed in the draft and Likely and Bateman, and then you have Justice Hill, didn't mention him yet. Like, there's just a lot to think about with the Ravens now, and they didn't have that when they had Greg Roman and not enough investment in the receiving options.
Yeah.
Now you change coordinators to one that suits Lamar Jackson better. You get better weapons. He looks amazing. He absolutely looks amazing. For me, Derrick Henry hitting 23 touchdowns might be the toughest part to hit. I think from a yards perspective, both of them can hit it as long as they stay healthy, because you got one extra game to do it, and they both are the reason why defenses are kept honest. Like, you can't key in on Derrick Henry because otherwise you're letting Lamar go for 50, and you can't key in on Lamar because otherwise you let Derrick Henry get a full head of steam and get an 80-yard rush all the way to the 5-yard line. So because of that, defense have to play them honest, and when you play them honest, you play them slower, so you're not as aggressive to get them on the ground. You don't want to do that against Henry, and then when you start keying on Henry, that's when Lamar hits you. Really, we detailed how they get to getting the ball in their star players' hands by structuring their offense around that, and there's no clear answer on that. There's no way to stop it. Like, the only way to stop them is injury. If they tweak their ankle or something, that is literally the only thing you can do.
Yeah. I'm excited to see how they play the rest of the season. I'm just like mind boggled at like Lamar Jackson stats this year. He's like, even on like the passing end, he's been so good. 1,800 pass yards, being 5th in the league right now, and then the 15-2 touchdown interception is crazy. Not as crazy as Josh Allen, but like still pretty crazy.
I mean, Josh Allen has thrown like interceptable balls. Okay, so like that, I think that 0 interception mark.
Every quarterback has interceptable balls that haven't been picked up. Like, we can
Not
say,
Caleb.
there's probably been a couple errant passes. Lamar Jackson should probably have 5 or 6 interceptions right now. Geno Smith.
Wait, I thought you were just marveling at his touchdown to interception ratio.
What was that?
I thought you were marveling at his touchdown to interception ratio, weren't you?
Yeah, but then you're talking about like the ones that like, there's been some that have been dropped. Like, every quarterback has them, but like it's still a cool stat to look at.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Like through 7 games, Josh
he looks
Allen
better
not having
than
a
his
single
MVP
pick.
season. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Josh Allen with like 400 more passing yards this year would be, I think, easily in the MVP talk.
Oh, yeah. 100%.
With the same amount of touchdowns, 12-0 ratio, I think it's easily in that consideration.
Yeah, because he's top 3 at that point. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
As far as passing stats and stuff. Yeah, but I mean, look at the rating. Look at the rating and the QBR. Like it's even all like the little plays. You see, like Lamar looks a lot more decisive this year, being second year in the Todd Monken system, and he doesn't have like when he started his rookie year, he had really huge issues on like throwing it to the boundaries, and the Chargers keyed in on that in the playoffs. You don't see that now with him. He's fine taking the out routes and like he's anticipating throws like that. So, I mean, I don't see why they can't hit the yards records they set. Touchdowns are variable, so that might be tricky. But yeah, I think the whole point in looking at this topic is Derrick Henry, second round pick in fantasy this year, is about to be like in for a record breaking season.
Yeah.
I thought it was Saquon, but like the stuff that Derrick Henry is doing this year is otherworldly. It's insane. It's insane. He should be washed by now, and he's not.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And Saquon's third. He's third in the league in yards. He has 658. Like,
yeah,
he's not having a bad season.
He's played one less game too.
Yeah, but like you look at what Henry is doing and like how he's elevating this Ravens team that was just in the conference championship game. Like they're a team to watch, man. Like I still think they can go to the Super Bowl despite losing to the Chiefs in the regular season. Like, don't forget, this team was a toe away from basically winning that game. Like I think they can win that game in Arrowhead if they do that, but I digress.
Yeah, but like just looking at the top 5 rushers is kind of crazy to like, or even like you look at like the top 6 where you have Derrick Henry at 1, Jordan Mason at 2, Saquon 3, Josh Jacobs 4, Chuba Hubbard at 5, and then James Conner at 6.
Yeah, and I mean Joe Mixon's all the way down there, but he is like the stats aren't indicative of how much he's meant to this Texans team. Like he single-handedly kept them in the game against like Green Bay. Like it was not Stroud's like Stroud did not have a good game against Green Bay. I know he didn't turn the ball over, but like Mixon was balling out. Like, and so I'd keep an eye on him. He hasn't played the amount of games that some of these guys have played. But like he's another guy elevating their offense. The running game is making a big return in the league. So yeah. Did you have anything you wanted to talk about the
No, I think that was most of the stuff.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, one thing that I've been watching, I saw this clip on Twitter. I can send it to you after this, Corstian, but I figured it'd be good to like talk about as well. It's like how certain defenses are handling motions. It's very interesting. Like I've looked at a couple stats in the past 5 years, and most of the effectiveness of plays, like with or without motion, have hovered around like 40%. So like the differences from year to year, like will vary. Like if it varies by 2% from year to year, it's a big deal. I saw this one clip of how the Rams handle a shifting tight end or receiver from across the field. They took the linebacker who was assigned to the guy in motion, followed him like it was man, and when the ball was snapped, that linebacker immediately went on a slot blitz and flustered the quarterback. And the reason why it worked is because the rest of the secondary like already had a pre-plan in mind that linebacker was going to blitz, so they were going to take on the guy who was in motion with one of the safeties. Cornerback takes on like the outside guy. They changed assignments basically. And it wasn't. They didn't mix it up. They communicated well on it. And I think you're going to start to see that in the league, where like you'll have basically the guy who's covering the motioner blitz, and you have a set plan by the defense to adjust when that guy blitzes. So it's not like you're going to see any missed gaps. So that's something I would keep an eye on. Right now, motion's been killing teams. That's been a major offensive weapon. But similar to the short motion last year, I think you're going to start to see that more in the defensive side.
Yeah, it's kind of cool just to see how the NFL adapts to the changes.
Yeah, year to year, you think like, oh, just keep it, just motion the guy, and if it's going to be man or zone. But now that defenses are adjusting that way, I don't think you do that anymore. Now you got to worry about changing protections. Like, protection schemes are also like they're as it is really rough with all these pass rushers in the AFC that are just really good. Like having to like allocate a guy 2, 3 chips even, and like now you add that wrinkle into it. It's kind of crazy. So, before I let you go, one last thing. What is your underdog prediction? Like, who do you think is going to win that's like currently not favored? To me, I think it's going to be the Rams. I think the Rams are going to. I know the Vikings just are fresh off and undefeated first 5 games, but I think Cooper Kupp being back alone is going to elevate them to where they need to be.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I literally talked about this earlier, saying how like with the Rams receivers back, this very much could be a trap game for the Vikings. Where like the Vikings, they come off a tough loss. You think you're gonna have an easy rebound week against the Rams, but then all of a sudden the Rams have potentially 1, potentially 2 of their best threats back in the game, and all of a sudden it's like it went from an easy game to wait, this is a team that like could make a deep playoff run. Like that's how much it changes. And so it's like, yeah, but the Vikings are also really good. So I mean, it'll be. I hope it's a good game.
It's gonna be a fun game. I'm confident in that. Alrighty, guys. Those are what we got. Fun episode this week. Corstian knows it. Just point at the Instagram handle amon.a.mission over there, right now. Our YouTube channel is Amon a Mission. While Corstian is just like going crazy and spazzing out there. You guys enjoy a great week 8. Until then, we will see you later.
Yeah. Peace. Woo! Woo!